which is our first year composition, the first semester. And we basically, our goal is to just make students more comfortable with writing. We're not necessarily going into the academic writing realm yet. We're just trying to make them comfortable with writing. And so I always encourage them to pick topics that they're passionate about and that they're truly interested in, because that's going to result in them enjoying writing more and enjoying me reading it more. And I was really pleased because Chase obviously picked a topic that he truly cared about, was truly passionate about, and that came through in his writing. And so I was very pleased to be able to convince him to present today. So I'll let him educate you on the Scarecrow.
So my name is Chase Capes, and my paper is called The Psychology of the Scarecrow, looking at what makes Scarecrow the Scarecrow. You might fool everyone else, but you can't fool me. There's something different about you. You're afraid. Scarecrow to Batman, Batman. There aren't many Batman villains that compare to Scarecrow. Of course, you have the Joker and his brainwashed psychiatrist of a girlfriend, but the Joker operates through chaos and anarchy, and it's what he relies on for control. Scarecrow relies on fear and psychological warfare. Scarecrow, aka Dr. Jonathan Crane, is also a former psychologist. Gotham should really check on its psychiatrist now then. He was determined to overcome his fears from childhood, while also bent on making everyone else face their greatest fears. He became a psychiatrist specializing in the human mind, specifically fear. After being kicked out of multiple universities for his human experimentations, he decided to team up with Falcone and Ra's al Ghul to poison the water supply in Gotham with his special fear toxin. But after this, he came into contact with Batman for the first time. After a short battle, Batman forced Crane to inhale his own toxin, and Crane became the Scarecrow. But what makes Scarecrow the Scarecrow? While many psychiatrists in the DC universe believe Scarecrow is just evil and not insane, there is no denying that he has something contributing to his fear-inducing, murderous, psychologically harmful behavior. Crane was bullied as a child, and he seems to have adopted the abuse he once endured from the bigger kids. He now wants to project that fear and pain he felt onto others by using his fear gas, which he created in his human experiments, to make people face their greatest fears. His use of fear and psychological warfare suggests that he is controlling, as Scarecrow could definitely be someone who feels as he needs to be in control of every situation, which would make him a narcissist. Listening to audio tapes from the game Arkham Asylum, where Dr. Steven tries to interview Scarecrow, it is very clear how manipulative Scarecrow also is. Over the course of 5 tapes, it seems that Dr. Steven himself is going insane by just trying to keep a conversation with a crazed psychiatrist. By the 5th tape, all is revealed when it is discovered that Scarecrow has been pumping his fear toxin into the room while also wearing his toxin as some sort of cologne. Batman can then be heard confronting Scarecrow about the situation and getting the doctor to safety. Batman then reveals another doctor, Dr. Kellerman, has been working towards an antidote for his toxin. His final words to Crane before leaving are, "How does that make you feel? Threatened, humiliated, scared." Defeated and humiliated, Crane goes on to work with the Joker to try and take control of Arkham Island and the Asylum. So when I talk about the different mental health problems plaguing the Scarecrow, it applies to the character as a whole. Different iterations of Scarecrow display different signs of different mental health issues, but I will only be addressing the ones that can be noticed by the major versions of Scarecrow from Arkham, the Dark Knight trilogy, and the Detective Comics. For instance, the Arkham version of Scarecrow displays social isolation, a common trait of OCD, by making his announcements from the Gotham PA system while showing himself on the big screen scattered throughout the city. The only time he is ever seen with people is when he is confronting Batman in person and is being backed up by the Arkham Knight's personal army. I would also like to point out that while it is mentioned here, not every version of Scarecrow has a tragic past of bullying and abuse. Some of them are just evil because they want to be, or it isn't mentioned. Considering Scarecrow's past with bullies, he could be suffering from PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder. Considering this, he may see Batman as another bully, another person that he must overcome. Dr. Lauren Soria from PsychologyToday.com says Crane probably still sees Batman as an especially terrifying echo from those early threats. Dr. Soria also attributes Crane's lack of empathy for his many victims to antisocial personality disorder. This can also explain his failure to demonstrate a conscience. The last disorder Dr. Surya attributes to Crane is paranoid personality disorder. Dr. Surya states his fear gas habits also suggest that he frequently feels threatened by others, whom he may assume are out to hurt him or at least dominate him, which points to paranoid personality disorder instead. Scarecrow also wouldn't be a Batman villain without a little bit of teroptophobia, or fear of bats, which is discovered at the end of Arkham Knight. I also believe that the Scarecrow could be suffering, if you can say that about him, from OCD. He demonstrates different symptoms such as agitation, impulsivity, social isolation, anxiety, and last but certainly not least, fear. So just to go back over everything we've covered so far, antisocial personality disorder, teroptophobia, OCD, paranoid personality disorder, and PTSD are all possible disorders that make Scarecrow the Scarecrow. Dr. Jonathan Crane, aka Scarecrow from Batman. Scarecrow is a pretty simple, complex character. He is much more different from all other Batman characters, as we've learned. I also think he's the most interesting character. I think fear itself is what keeps Scarecrow going. Without it, he's just Dr. Crane. Or is he? It's fear that inspires him to become a psychiatrist in the first place, but it's also fear that leads to his defeat. In Batman Arkham Knight, after a long and intense final battle with Batman, or what's left of him at that point in the game, Scarecrow is once again forced by the Batman to take in his own toxin and screams in terror as thousands of bats descends upon him, scaring him so bad whenever he gets arrested by the GCPD, he seems to be but a shell of his former fear-inducing self. That is also what leads to his teroptophobia diagnosis. He also has a chronic fear of Batman. He is scared of defeat. Without fear, Scarecrow is nothing, but with it, he is everything. If Scarecrow didn't suffer abuse at the hands of bullies and his father, would he still be Scarecrow? Would he leave Gotham and her crime-filled streets? Would he simply be a petty criminal who gets a couple bones broken due to a beatdown by Batman in the streets every couple months? I like to believe that maybe without his traumatic past, Dr. Jonathan Crane would become a psychiatrist and help Batman. He's already so good at what he does, so maybe he could help study the major criminals of Gotham. Maybe he could even help the Joker and heal him. Joker has been given pills for his conditions before in comics, and it worked, so maybe Dr. Crane could cure Gotham of the disease that is the Joker. So the important thing is, he did get bullied, and he used it to become one of the most complex, prolific, and dangerous villains in Gotham. I'd say he's second to the Joker. He has mental health issues that contribute to his actions. He has a past that will not let him quit. He may not be insane, but he is the Scarecrow.
Other questions for our speaker? Have you considered doing a series?
You could do
Different
Penguin,
All the villains.
I'm just saying, for all the different Batman
Penguin,
villains.
Joker, Harley Quinn, you know?
Is there a particular reason that Scarecrow is the one you chose?
I'm more interested in the villains, like their psyche and their the psychological problems they carry. And the Joker is the reason I didn't pick like somebody like the Joker or like Harley Quinn is like so many people have done so much work and papers on them, and I feel like the Scarecrow is more of a overlooked character throughout the series, and even in like the different comics and games, he's always just been like a side character or in somebody else's plot. Like even in Arkham Knight, he's supposed to be the main villain, and he still gets kicked out by the Arkham Knight, who sort of takes over towards the end of the game.
I mean, Arkham Asylum series of video games, so good.
So a lot of people talk about how the Joker is kind of a foil for Batman, and that kind of like the Joker is who Batman could have become. But I think your argument makes me think that maybe the Scarecrow is who Batman could have become had he chosen, the other path. Because, Batman has this traumatic past. Batman has a fear, also has phobias. Batman is fearful of being inadequate. So it sounds to me like the Scarecrow might be more of a adequate sort of reverse side of the coin to Batman than the Joker. Would you think that could be a valid argument?
Yeah, I think the main difference is just because how Batman whenever his parents died, he inherited that entire company and all of that money, and Scarecrow is just he was an orphan,
Yeah.
and he really had nowhere to go, and so I think Batman was able to get better help with his trauma and Scarecrow was sort of just left out in the streets, able to cope with it on his own.
So there's a socioeconomic element as well in that.
So, forgive my ignorance, I'm not sure exactly where the fear gas that he creates, like what the origin of that, but could some of that trying to create and perfect that, could that lead to his symptoms that's shown? Is that different iterations of that, and whenever he tested them, he got some of that, and that's where some of his, his fears and other things manifest?
Yeah, I think that could be a possibility, just because in his first interaction with Batman himself, Batman made him take in that fear toxin. But before then, I think it's definitely possible he could have came into contact with that, since he was doing human experimentation on the side, and that's why another reason he became who he was, because nobody really understood what he was trying to do in a sense. But he was getting kicked out of all these universities for his human experimentation, and it could have got to a point, it's not mentioned, but it could have been to a point where he tested himself a little bit, or tried to find out what effects it had on him just as a person instead of somebody else.
All right, well, let's thank our speaker again.